All right, everybody, we are live, and we are going to be talking. This is part 4 of how I was a food addict and I overcame. And in this video, if you've missed the previous 3, we talked about, I just generally shared my story. I talked about how to identify if you're a food addict or if you have addictive cycles in your brain, because most people will be like, yeah, I'm addicted to sugar, but they won't call themselves a food addict. Or they won't actually like go to a 12-step group or something, right? And then I talked about how to identify and the effects that it has on the brain. And then I actually, in the last one, in the number 3 of 4, I talked about how it actually is created in the brain, how food addiction is a real thing. It's not like this fake made up thing. Food addiction is actually the hardest addiction to overcome, they're finding, and it's the most addictive cycle out of any substance out there. You know, cocaine, meth, drugs, alcohol, porn, sex, food is the hardest. And I talked about why that happens. And in this one, in this video, this is the last section. I'm going to share with you how I overcame food addiction. These are things that I learned over years and years and years of going to 12-step groups and struggling emotionally and researching. My background's in psychology, so I'm a total self-help guy and reading tons of books and just like diving in as much as I could to overcome this. And I now teach this in my program. I teach people how to do this. This is one of the major components of my program of rebooting the mental and emotional side, as well as the metabolism and the physical side. You have to do both sides. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. Like the mental and physical components, the psychological components of the brain are really powerful. And they're actually physiological components of the brain too, because it's actually an actual real cycle. It's a disease in the brain. And I talked about in the last video how it's not just like something where like, yeah, I have a hard time saying no, like it's actually an addiction. Food is, and the way food companies formulate their food makes it addictive. They're finding research. So in this video, I'm going to share my screen with you again, and we're going to talk about those 3 cycles I talked about last time, and I'm going to show you how to actually break them. Things that I do, I teach my clients, and I've done for years. I still do these things, and a lot of these things are used in some of the best addiction recovery centers in the world or therapists in the world, and use them in my program to help kind of break through that. So let's talk about it. There's 3 cycles again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so you can actually see what I'm talking about here. And we're going to go through this one more time. So let's make this go live. All right. So last time we talked about this cycle. This is the actual kind of dopamine cycle in the brain. So just to kind of, again, go through this really fast. So when you eat food, it increases dopamine in your brain, floods the frontal lobe of your brain, which is the brake pedals, kind of the emotional control, the like I shouldn't do that part of your brain. So that starts to shut that part of the brain down, which then causes what's called cortical hypofrontality. So this is the major component of this, is it actually shows that the frontal lobe of your brain shrinks, it atrophies, and that leads to the judgment, the moral judgment of your brain and decisions to become impaired, and basically the brake pads of your brain wear out. So when that happens, your brain produces less dopamine, and then you don't feel as good as you used to feel. Okay, so your pleasure thermostat rises. And what that means is what used to make you feel normal and good, like holding hands with your spouse or going for a walk or eating carrots and vegetables or whatever it is, those things don't make you feel good anymore. And so you need to be eating in order to do that. And so you eat food again, and it causes this cycle. So in order to break this cycle, the number one thing you need to do is have abstinence. Like literally, now, I don't mean stop eating food. I mean abstinence from the foods that are going to cause crazy dopamine in your brain. And we're going to talk about what that means. And we're also going to talk about the pleasure thermostat, because having a higher pleasure thermostat, meaning having a higher a feeling of normalcy in your life as far as like what actually is normal and makes you feel good, is not good. You don't want that to be high, because normal stuff that everybody else does in life, like holds hands and like goes for walks and talks with their friends, it makes them feel good. If yours is higher than that, that stuff, it becomes blah, and it's not going to make you feel good. So you have to address that. So that's actually the area we're going to be talking most about in this cycle. The really cool thing about it is they've shown that and maybe I already said this, but the cortical hypofrontality, when your brain actually shrinks, they've actually shown with abstinence and without this cycle happening in great amounts, it actually goes back to normal with just weeks, even, and months of abstinence, as they say, of sobriety, as we call it in the 12-step groups. So as you start to change this cycle, which I'm going to show you how to do right now, your brain actually starts to go back to normal. Now, one of the things that we have to identify when we talk about this pleasure thermostat is the inability, this is a definition of addiction we talked about in the first video, is the inability to deal with emotion appropriately. So you use food to cope with your emotions. That's one of the definitions of addiction. And the other one we talked about was you do it even though you know you shouldn't. You know it's harmful. So you have this inability to deal with emotions appropriately, right? And so what this does is it makes it so your pleasure thermostat goes up. Normal things don't make you feel good anymore, and you have to do things like eat food in order to feel actually good. So how do you break this? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to take out the processed refined foods. Now, I know this is easier said than done, but here's why. Research is finding more and more, the more they do research on our very industrialized processed foods that are full of sugars and starches and chemicals and MSGs and salt and fat and all these different things that they're putting in our food. I actually find that it literally changes the structures of our brain. It changes our palate so that we don't prefer normal foods anymore. So like people that come into my program where we take all this stuff out and I teach them, and that's not to say you can't ever have like treats and cookies and caramel and popcorn and jerky and like crackers and chips and whatever else again, right? It's just to say you have to take out the bad ingredients that are causing your brain to go haywire and nuts over these ingredients. So when I have people take this out in my program, they literally say things like, wow, like these berries taste amazing. Like I love vegetables. It's crazy. Like I actually really like fish. Like some people have never even had fish in their life and they begin to like it on my program because we literally change their brain back to normal by taking out the processed refined food. So that's the first part. Easier said than done this, but that is what I teach people. Like literally that's what I teach people in my program is one, how to reset the mind and the body, but how to eat the right foods sustainably so you can actually enjoy them. You don't have to just eat like chicken and broccoli every day, all day long. And you can still enjoy treats and snacks and that kind of thing and keep the weight off. And like I have treats and snacks multiple times a week. I eat chips and salsa. I have cookies and all sorts of really tasty stuff. I'm just thinking last week, I keep saying caramel because we had caramels. But I do that. I've been doing it for 7 years and I've kept the 50 pounds I lost off during that whole time. And I travel and go out to eat and it's totally sustainable. So that's what I teach people. But you know, you can do it on your own, just take them out. It's a little harder to learn how to do that. Obviously without a little guidance, you just have to spend tens of thousands of hours like I did, but it's doable. I mean, stick with real food. That's the key. Now I'm going to talk more about the second one and how to break this thermostat and change the thermostat. So the second one is you actually have to learn to handle emotions appropriately. Right? If it's an inability to handle emotions appropriately, you have to learn how to handle them, right? Like, oh, light bulb goes on. Now it sounds easy, but like when it comes down to it and you're stressed and it's time to eat some chocolate because you're stressed, well, what do? Right? And most people aren't even aware that they're handling emotions inappropriately. So let me share a little bit of the science behind what's happening here and how we actually change this. So this is really fascinating. So make sure you listen close on this because this is going to blow your mind. If you're especially if you're a person who stress eats, if you drink energy drinks or any soda, I put energy drink here, but it could be Mountain Dew, it could be diet soda, it could be anything you use for energy or like low energy or tired or fatigued. If you have pain and you're using medications and things like that for it, and I'm not promoting or not promoting medicine here, I'm just showing you what happens here. So what happens is, let's say you're emotionally stressed or you feel an emotion and you eat food, or you're fatigued and tired and you drink an energy drink, or you're in pain and you use medication to solve that. Well, what happens is that gives your brain a high. The brain likes that. It's like, whoa, this was cool. Dopamine kicks in and all these other feel-good emotions. Now, this also happens with other things like actual drugs and alcohol and sex and pornography and all that stuff. But this is we're talking about food. And so when you're stressed and you eat food, your brain gets a high. We already talked about that cycle, right? It's just a different way to look at it. Well, what your brain likes your brain likes to get a high. It makes it feel good. Your brain always wants to feel good. It's always trying to make you feel good. If it doesn't feel good, there's a problem going on, right? And so it's going to try to seek things that make it feel good. So what happens is when you get a high from food or an energy drink or a medication, what then happens is your brain tries to create that high again. How does it create that high again? It makes you experience the thing that got it the high. I'm just gonna let that sink in for a second. So when you eat food when you're stressed and it makes you feel better, your brain is going to create more stress to make you feel better again. When you're tired and you drink an energy drink or a soda and get a high and get some energy, your brain is going to create fatigue and tiredness for you to get that high again. You'll literally become chronic fatigue. When you're in pain and you use a medication to get a high to overcome that, your brain will literally create fatigue and you'll become chronic fatigue. Fascinating, right? Let that sink in, because most people, including myself, we do these things and we are literally creating this process in our brain. We are creating chronic fatigue. If you constantly have back pain and you're using something to fix it, if you constantly are fatigued at 3 o'clock in the day and you're using like a 5-hour energy or whatever to get through it, you're creating chronic fatigue. Okay, so I just want you to know that. It's really fascinating. Now, I'm going to show you how to break this. If this is you, like, let me know in the comments. Like, this is crazy groundbreaking stuff that they're coming out with research currently. And I'm just checking here the feed to make sure there's no comments. Let's turn this down. Wally, thanks, man. Looking great, Jared. Sitting at. I didn't see what you said. Thanks, Wally. Appreciate that. All right. So there's a little bit of lag on my screen here. All right. So let's break this down. So how do we actually fix this process now? Right. So if the high is something your brain wants and it's going to create the negative to get it, it's called an association. So your brain's in a very associative thing. So what happens is here's what we have to do. When you feel stressed, or you're tired or you're in pain or something like that, it could be anything. What you need is a negative. And I put smelling salts here because this is a really powerful way to do this. Smelling salts, if you've ever smelled them, are really strong. It's like, oh, like that is bad. Like you do not want to smell that, right? So it creates a negative for your brain. So if you do this enough times, what's just to happen is your brain, remember, it's associative. It associates one thing with another. So if you're stressed all the time and you smell something bad every time you're stressed, guess what your brain's going to start associating with stress? Something negative, something that doesn't make it feel good. So what's going to want to do? It's going to want to avoid stress. If you're tired all the time and you smell something like crazy smelling salts and your brain doesn't like that because it doesn't make it feel good, it's going to avoid feeling tired. Right? So you can literally increase your energy by doing this. Now, here's the next step. So you create something negative that associates with the negative thing in your life. So if you have pain, then do something negative that makes it feel more pain, or creates a different kind of pain. So your brain associates pain with the pain and doesn't want the first pain, right? So then what you do after you do that is you then do something healthy, right? And I'm going to show you a bunch of options and things you can do here. But examples would be like go for a walk, call your spouse, call a friend, practice some gratitude, do some meditation, do yoga, do a handstand, anything that's a healthier version than eating food or taking a drink or whatever, right? And what that does is it creates a high for your brain on the healthy thing. So exercise is a common one for this, or just going for a walk is what I used to do in journaling. Those were my two go-tos. So I would do something healthy instead, and my brain would get a high from that. And so remember, it wants the high. So what is it going to associate with the high? The healthy thing that you did. So if it's journaling, it's going to want more journaling. If it's going for a walk, it's going to want more walks. If it's calling your spouse, it's going to want you to talk to your spouse more. So you do something healthy to create the high. And then it stops associating the high with the bad. Right? So I hope that makes sense for you guys. And what happens is that normalizes your pleasure thermostat, because normal, healthy things should make you feel good. If they don't, you have a problem. If you don't want to go out with friends anymore, if you don't want to just eat carrots and fruits and vegetables and proteins and they don't taste good to you anymore, if you don't like to just do normal things, if like things seem boring to you and you'd rather do something else that, you know, involves food or some other substance, like that's a problem. You have a problem. Okay. So you need to start associating the high, give your brain a high with something healthy, and even associate the bad with it, something negative, so that your brain wants the high more often. Does So that's how you break this first cycle. Is number one, you got to get the bad food out, because the bad foods will literally change the structures of your brain. And then you have to learn how to handle emotions appropriately. Now, if you can't do the smelling salts, that's fine. Find some negative thing in your life that you really don't want. Like slap. That's why people like used to slap rubber bands on their wrist, because it creates pain. Sure, go for it. But even if you do something healthy, and I'll teach you another cycle here in a second that kind of goes along with this. If you do something healthy to kind of intercept that emotion and create a high with the healthy thing rather than the negative thing, your brain will start to change as well. But the smelling salts is so pronounced and just so intense that it does it very, very quickly. So that's the first cycle. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that. We'll keep rolling here, and maybe we can come back if you guys do have any questions. So, all right, here's the next cycle we talked about in the last video. This, I'm going to cover it really fast again so we can talk about how to break it. The addictive cycle goes like this. First, you have a thought, then you entertain the thought, then you go to a place to act on the thought, then you act on the thought. So there's 4 steps in this cycle. So how this works with food is, oh, somebody brought donuts in, maybe I should have a donut, right? That's the thought. Then you entertain the thought. You go, but I'm on my diet, or I'm on my whatever. I'm trying to be healthy. That's not good for me. It's gonna make me feel sick. Or, my wife tells me I should cut back. And you sit and entertain the thought. You're like, maybe a bite's not a bite. I'll just have a bite. I'll just have half a one. Or they shouldn't, I can't have them go to waste. Like, you just sit and entertain this and ruminate and just fester on this thought forever. Then you actually go to the place to act on the thought. You walk over to the desk to grab it, bring it back to your desk, right? Or maybe you're stopping at the gas station. Maybe you're going to the grocery store. Maybe you're going down to McDonald's and grabbing a McFlurry or whatever, right? And then you actually eat it, okay? Which actually makes you think about it more, and then you want to do it again. Maybe not right then and there sometimes, but maybe later. So you have to do what I call interception. This is something that I developed for myself that helped me break through this cycle. So here's how you do it. So here's your interception. So at any stage in these 4 stages that you go through, in these transition points from the thought to entertaining the thought, or from the entertaining the thought to the place you're acting on the thought, you have to intercept. So we'll represent that with a red line. So you literally just have to intercept the entertaining of the thoughts and stop it. So, and I'm gonna give you some examples of healthy things you can do after this, but it could literally be anything. So when you have the thought that I should eat that donut, literally just stop yourself and ask yourself, do I really want that donut? Like, yes, of course I want it right now, but like, is it going to help me get my goals? Or do something totally different, like go for a walk, call your spouse, journal, practice some gratitude, do a handstand, go give your friend a high five, whatever. Like, I'll show you a list here of things you can do. But as long as you can stop the process from entertaining that thought, it's not going to go anywhere. You'll literally stop the cycle right then and there. And you do this over and over again, it will literally rewire your brain, and you won't want it anymore. These thoughts won't come anymore. Now that happens over time, but you have to rewire the brain. It's like saying, I want a big old bicep and I want to get really strong. Well, how many times do you have to work out for that to happen? It's the same process for our brain. We have to train our brain to do what we want it to do. So let's say you don't stop it when you entertain the thought. Let's say you entertained the thought and you walked over to get the donut, or you're thinking about walking over to get the donut. Well, you have to intercept right there then, right? So maybe you just be like, what am I doing? And you go get a drink instead, or go to the bathroom, go walk up the stairs, go take a breath of fresh air, whatever. Like, go to your coworker's desk instead. Go call your spouse, right? Intercept this stage of not going to the place to act on the thought. Okay. But let's say that you entertained the thought, you stopped at the gas station, you grabbed a candy bar, you're sitting in your car, sitting there thinking about it, and you open the candy bar, boom, you've got to intercept right there. You don't have to eat the candy bar just because you bought it. Let's say you picked the donut up and you brought it back to your desk. You don't have to eat it. Let's say you bought the entire box of donuts. You can throw them away. You can literally walk out the door right then and put them in the garbage can right next to you. You don't have to give them to somebody. Don't save them for your kids. They don't need that crap, right? So you have to stop the cycle. And at any stage, like literally, even if you've eaten some of it, even if you've eaten one donut and you're going for a second donut, intercept the cycle at any stage, at any time. Now, what happens is you start doing it sooner, you start doing it sooner, you start doing it sooner. And it's the parable, the analogy I like to use is a man or a woman walks down a street and falls in a hole. Well, the next day he walks down the same street and falls in the same hole. The next day he walks down the same street, falls in the same hole. Next day he walks down the same street, sees the hole, still falls in the hole. Next day, same thing, sees the hole, falls in the hole. Next day, sees the hole, walks around the hole. Next day, takes a different road. So that's this process. You literally have to be aware of what hole you're falling in before you can even walk around the hole, right? Sometimes we still see the hole and we still do it. But the sooner we can catch ourselves, the sooner we can see that hole, so the sooner we can see that road, eventually we're going to start being like, wow, I can see that road a mile down the road. I can see that road a mile away. And I know I'm not going to go down that road. And that's what's happened for me is it's not that I like don't see donuts and I'm like, man, those things look amazing. Like I definitely think that, especially when I smell it and I'm hungry and that's the only thing around, like, of course I want one. But I know the road that I've been down and I don't want to go down that road again. So I just take a different road. I just stop my thought right there and I just walk on my way. Now, what I've done is I've also changed my identity. I've also changed my pleasure thermostat, and I know I don't want to go back there. So normal things make me feel good. If I ever have those thoughts, I go do one of the things I already talked about, right? So here's some of those things you can do to do some interception. There's a lot more than this. I just listed a bunch. So you can do journaling. Like I said, you can practice gratitude. You can do meditation. You can do just go for a walk, reading, calling someone, texting someone, exercise, handstands, whatever you want to do. Literally, like breathing is another good one I didn't put on here. These are all things that are not associated with food that are really healthy things for your body. Now, I did put, you can yell. I used to do that sometimes, just like yell as loud as I could to break the cycle. Like I'm sitting in my car, like sitting on my hands so I don't eat something. I would just like scream just to get it out and then go throw it away. Now, I did put drinking water on here, because it's something that can help, like getting a sparkling water, but oftentimes it doesn't actually do the same thing because it's associated with food. It's associated with the same cycle. And so you're just trying to like mask it and cover it up. These other things literally change what you're doing. They literally change your brain and the like processes and pathways your brain is taking. So anyway, hopefully those things help. If you haven't tried some of those things, go try them. If you've never journaled, I put that one first and gratitude, because those two things like will change your life. They did for me. Meditation and walking, reading, calling someone, texting someone, like get out of the isolation. That's the key is breaking the cycle and getting outside of yourself. So text somebody. That's why we, in 12-step groups, we use support people and a sponsor. In my program, people use me and other people in the group to help support each other. So, and this is, again, what I do in my process, but hopefully this helps you guys. Now, here's the last cycle, and this is a really powerful one that we'll break down, and we'll be able to get through this. So this cycle happens everywhere, but it's actually an addictive cycle. But it really happens with like dieting mentality. So maybe you can relate to this as we go through it again. So the top part is you feel motivated for change, and then you start getting complacent, you lose motivation, maybe you're not seeing progress. So that makes you feel less motivated, and then you act out. Once you act out, and then you feel guilty, you gain motivation, and that creates more motivation for change. Now, this cycle happens all the time, and it happens with everything, including like how dirty and clean your car is, right? Like you might have a really clean car and then it gets dirty over time and dirty over time. You're like, crap, I need to do something about this. So you do something about it and you feel crappy, and then you start going through the cycle. But with food and dieting and our weight, this is huge. And this acting out portion down at the bottom, that can last for days, weeks, months, years. You could literally just sit and act out and like just never care about food addiction or food problems or weight gain until eventually it gets to a certain point. And that's when you're going to gain that motivation. It's going to motivate you. If you don't see any results and blah, 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 it's just going to cycle through. Here's a different way to look at this cycle. It'd be like a graph, like a continual flow chart, right? So at the top, you're motivated for change. You start losing motivation. You act out. That makes you gain motivation. You just ebb and flow. This is a normal thing. You cannot fight this cycle ever. It happens with everything in our life. If you don't think it, you're wrong. It's a normal human behavior. And somewhere in the middle is your normal, right? Like think about your car. Somewhere in the middle of really clean versus really dirty, that's where your car is most of the time. And so this ebb and wave is constantly happening. And so we just have to, so one of the things we have to do is we have to start realizing where is our normal, where is our really motivated and like I'm on top of the world, and where is our like I'm the worst person in the world, I can never change and I'm going to be doomed to be this way forever. Where's the middle? That's where you are most of the time. So the way you change this, because you can't fight it, you literally cannot fight this cycle. It happens. So what you want to do is you want to make the cycle tighter, and you want to make the cycle or your normal higher. You want to literally change your normal. So whoops, wrong way. So you literally want to raise your level of normal so that you no longer are okay with the acting out. And what happens also is you need to tighten how low they actually go. So what I mean by that is if you can catch your lows and watch your highs, be aware that you're like, oh, I'm feeling crazy motivated right now. Like, just know in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, whatever it is for you, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years, you're going to lose motivation. At some point you will. It's normal. It's human. And so you have to catch that and pull yourself out of it as quickly as possible. So you have to be aware. So the way you do this, besides catching it, is you literally choose to be different. I know that sounds like novel, like, whoa, you just choose, right? But literally, all you have to do is create a new identity. And then based on that identity, you have to take actions on that identity. We call it a choice-based identity. You choose to be different and choose to be somebody else. And then all your choices after that are based on who you chose to be. So if you choose to be a healthy person and you no longer eat crappy food, well, guess what? Anytime you eat crappy food, that's going to be different than your normal. It's not going to be your normal anymore. So you're going to change. And your low will get tighter and tighter and tighter, and will get lower and lower and lower. So your old normal, which was down there, isn't your normal anymore. You literally elevate your entire, plane of living, your entire sense of well-being and worth and motivation and empowerment, right? So by changing who you are and your identity and deciding to be different, and then taking the actions that we've talked about today in this video and watching these lows, catching the lows and observing the highs, you can literally start to tighten this gap so that it doesn't happen as much or as quickly. And you can catch them so that you are constantly moving up. Now, again, this isn't flat. Hopefully it's not flat. Your normal level of living, hopefully it's tilted. That's literally meant to be tilted. I know it just looks weird, but you literally, if you're constantly doing this, you're constantly going up and down and up and down. If you're watching me do this with my finger, hopefully it's not just doing this and you never improve. Hopefully it's doing this and you're constantly improving, going up, 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 and up. Now you're always going to be ebbing down. That's fine. That's a normal process. Like, you can't fight that. But hopefully you're trending upward every time you go down, and those downs are getting less. They're not getting as big. And then what happens is, like, for instance, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, my normal was not what I'm normal now. My normal was like drinking a Dr. Pepper and grabbing 2 candy bars of Maverick at a gas station, getting a Slurpee later that night, like eating 5 donuts that are crappy Krispy Kremes. Like, that was my normal. My normal now is like, I never eat that stuff, right? But that doesn't mean I don't eat treats and snacks. It's just learning how to do it the right way. So my normal is very different, right? I used to like never have standards around like snacking and like eating treats and like being in charge of how much I'm eating and what I'm eating. Like, I used to never care about that stuff. Now my normal, I absolutely care. I 100% care about my body. And I used to not, I mean, I did care. I exercised. I was running like 6 to 10 miles a day, but like, I didn't understand it in the same way I do. So my level of living, my plane of living has elevated. I'm happier. I'm more motivated. It's changed my life forever, and I've been able to break through that addictive cycle. So I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys, and as far as this addiction series. And I wanted to share my story in hopes that you guys can resonate with it a little bit. Again, you may not like have this addictive cycle happening, but just so you know, if you eat sugar, it's happening to some degree, especially with processed refined sugars. If you eat refined flour and bad oils, like anything that comes in a box, can, package, or whatever else, bag, like, this is happening a little bit in your brain. And if you don't think so, I always just say, try to stop eating the foods you don't think you're addicted to. It's pretty easy to start realizing, like, if I can't ever go without that again, or a food like that again, like, if you don't think chips are a problem, cut out all chips from your life. If you don't think sugar in general, cut out all sugar from your life. See how it goes. And if you can do it, awesome. Like, more power to you. I couldn't. So I had to learn how to break through that. So I hope this helps. This is what I help people do in my program too. So again, if you need help, let me know. This is something that I can help people break through, and not only the actual physiological processes in the brain, the mental and emotional side. We reboot the metabolism. Average results are 20 to 45 pounds in 6 weeks, and it's permanent because we're helping create a new metabolism set point for your body. We're teaching you how to break through this stuff, teaching you how to eat the treats and snacks and do it sustainably, so you don't have to kill yourself in the gym and count your calories as well. So totally unique process that most people out there are not talking about this kind of stuff. So if you feel like you need help, let me know. I'd love to chat with you. Message me, email me, whatever works for you. And I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.